What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and to my series where we focus on the best fighters in the world. I give you 5 things that make them so exceptional with training tips so you can improve in the gym and be a little bit more like them. And today we are talking about Marat Grigorian. This 154-pound kickboxer has fought for pretty much all the major kickboxing organizations and is one of the most feared fighters in the sport. And tomorrow, he is going to be going up against kickboxing #1 Superbon for the 1FC world title. So let's break down what he is so exceptional at and why he has a good chance of becoming the new 1FC champion. So within this series, where we're looking at the best fighters in the world, I very often look analytically at these fighters and try to break down what I would fear in them most if I fought them. Now, very often it's a specific technique that we're looking at. Like when we talk about Bukau, we talk about his left round kick. It's a scary round kick. It's a hard technique to deal with. But in Marat Grigorian, when I watch him, I don't look at any techniques in particular and go, oh my gosh, that is the one devastating technique that makes this guy so good. It's more broad with him. It's massive things that make him very good instead of just small specific techniques. So let's move in and talk about the first thing that I want to focus on, and that is his volume. And what I mean by that is the output that he has when he fights. It's very rare to see Marat not getting ready to throw a punch. He does not take a step back. He does not take his time. He is somebody who puts in lots of volume. And when he sees a moment of weakness, his hands just start flying. And he does not let up, and that volume is just crazy. When you come up against Marat Grigorian, you have to know the volume is going to be wild, and you need the cardio to keep up with him. If you do not have good cardio, which is something that he is exceptional at as well, because with amazing volume comes the necessity for cardio. So if you do not have the cardio, he will overrun you with just sheer volume. Most of his volume comes from his hands, and he just throws. Now, what you can do if you want to get this type of volume is you can just start getting on the bag and literally just put a timer on for 10 seconds. And when the timer goes, you just start punching as hard and as fast as you can against that bag, taking 0 breaks. And then when the buzzer sounds, step back, take maybe 10 seconds, and then again, back in on the next 10, pushing really hard. To develop this style that Marat has, you need that good cardio, and you just need to have that ability to be comfortable stepping forward and firing off massively long combos. Next up, I want to talk about Marat's defense. And his defense is very unique in the fact that he very simply just stands here. When pretty much anything comes at him punching wise, he just stands. He doesn't make adjustments, he doesn't slip very often, and he doesn't even roll his hands around his head. He just keeps everything tucked in. And if you look at me from the side, a lot of people stand very straight, but the way that he manages to protect everything at once is he collapses his back. He rounds it out so that his elbows can come down to his hips, his chin stays tucked to his chest. It is very hard to penetrate his defense with the hands. The guys who have had success defeating Marat were not reliant on throwing boxing hands, they were more throwing kicks, banging them off the biceps or chopping towards the legs, because he does not check those very often. He just takes them and then fires back in again, like we talked about the last point, tries to get the victory with volume. But landing a KO shot against Grigorian is very difficult. It's very, very hard to get through that guard of his. You will not see his hands down here. He looks like he's ultra focused on protecting himself, keeping his head safe, and coming down to the body with body hooks. Nothing's going to land. He keeps those elbows super tight and very, very protected. If this is something that you like, you go, wow, I like Marat's defensive style and I want to get better at it. The very simple way to do that is to put your back against a wall, have an opponent stand in front of you, give them 2-3 minutes on the clock and just have them punch at you. And you just stand here and you get used to tensing the body as the impact comes, but then relaxing in between. but there's not a whole bunch of movement in between. It's very simple. I just hold here. I make tiny little adjustments just to make sure I'm closing off any potential holes. And you want to start off and have somebody punch light at you, super light, but then you want to get to the point where they go a little harder, and then you get comfortable all of a sudden with somebody banging off pretty hard shots at you, and you just stand your ground. This is by no means a defensive style that is, I would say, comfortable or easy to learn, but once you get it down, we can see how effective it is just by watching any Marat Grigorian fight. From here, I want to talk about Marat's pressure. And I have actually talked to people who were potential Marat opponents, and they went, I hate the idea of having to fight this guy because he just does not let up. He pressures the whole time. And when you have somebody who's constantly moving on you, constantly bringing the fight to you, it's very exhausting. It's going to be very tiring. And you need to have a good game plan because we already talked about his volume. And when you put that volume together with that pressure, just always moving forward, it's rare to see him step backwards. And part of that is that tight guard he has. He knows if he moves forward and somebody throws on him, he's just going to eat the shots off the forearms. He's going to have that nice defensive guard, and he can continue to pressure forward and look to utilize that volume, those long boxing combos, whenever the person he's pressuring eases off. If you are looking to defeat Marat Grigorian, you cannot do it with pressure, and you cannot do it with volume, because he's so good in these areas. You need to slow the pace of the fight, and you need to pick away at him while using angles for evasion. It'll be very interesting to see if Superbon can do that. That's who he's fighting tomorrow for the 1FC title. Superbon is not somebody I look at and go, okay, he's fantastic at cutting angles. I think Marat has a very difficult style for Superbon, but Superbon is on top of his game. He's looking so sharp, so this contest is super exciting. To get better at being a pressure fighter, you very simply need to lock down that defense, which you're already talked about, and then just hunt people. You move forward and you don't worry if you take a couple punches off the guard. You move in, you take a shot off the guard, and then you throw back. Then you guard right back up. But like we said about the defense, everything stems from confidence in that defense. So until you have that down, you do not want to focus on being a pressure fighter. Now moving on to the next point. When I watch Marat Grigorian and I go, whoa, what's really hard about fighting him? What makes him so dangerous? I look at his overall strength, his physical strength, not the other strengths, not the strengths that he has in the martial arts attributes, but just the strength of his body. He's a very hard guy to move backwards. His legs look really strong. He has that muscle that's just not going to let him get pushed over. When he hits, he looks incredibly strong and tough. His back is filled with muscles, which probably makes his defensive game that much better because it's so hard to move his arms. It's so hard to break this guy down. He has got to be one of the most powerful guys at the 154-pound division in the kickboxing world. And this is why so many fighters, I think, are worried about fighting him, because if you put together the pressure, the volume, and then the strength that he has and how he's able to incorporate that into the power that he places into shots, he becomes a very scary, dangerous fighter. In terms of building your own strength, you can go to the gym, you can focus on power weights. That's definitely one way to do it. Another is to make sure that when you're hitting pads, you're hitting the bag, you put 100% into all your shots. And when we look at Marat Grigorian training, it's very rare to see him pitter-patter. He doesn't do that. He hits, he hits, he hits. When you hit hard, your body is just going to get stronger. It's going to adapt to the need to have more muscle. So you just push the pace constantly, and the body will grow and develop, and it will become stronger and stronger, I believe, like Marat Grigorian has done. The last thing I want to focus on is Marat's lack of openings. Why is it so difficult to land on this guy? Well, we already talked about his defense. Now, the defense is one aspect, but we're also talking about when he throws his shots. It's very rare to see his jaw raise up. It's very, very rare to see his hand drop. And I can only think of one time where he made a tiny mistake. He got clipped, he went down, But then from there, he came back with a vengeance, and with the pressure, he ended up scoring a knockdown anyway, or a knockout, sorry, anyway. Now, because he focuses so much on his hands being tight to his head, he protects his body, he protects his head with those arms, it leaves his legs exposed. And he takes a lot of low kicks. But just the strength that we already talked about that he has, and the conditioning of his body that he has, the low kicks, I've never seen him buckle on a low kick. So when you're not worried about taking low kicks, and you just go, oh, I'll take them to give a punch, now all of a sudden the lack of opportunity on this guy is very, very limited. And when you're having trouble finding anything that you can land on somebody, and you're thinking, geez, I don't know if I can beat this guy by knocking him out. So now I have to beat him on the points. But we already know and talked about why Grigorian is so dangerous with his volume and his pressure and his strength. So all of a sudden beating him on points becomes a very scary thing, because you're going to have somebody constantly pressuring and moving forward. So again, as we already said, the way to beat him is to slow the pace of the fight. But that's easier said than done when you have somebody in front of you who is strong and focused on being a pressure fighter. Throughout the years, I have tried, as Marat Grigorian demonstrates, to minimize my openings, to make sure that when I throw, I keep everything tight so that I don't expose myself to counter shots. I accomplished this by basically every time I would shadow box, do bag work, whatever, I would always think, as I throw, what's my other hand doing? Throw, what's this hand doing? Obviously I'm focusing on this, but that's only 50% of my focus. The other 50% is always on what the other hand is doing, and I remember to keep my chin tucked the whole time. As soon as I do that, the lack of openings just becomes so much better for me. I don't expose myself, and it's just repetition. Always coming back to the head with those hands and just being so diligent about it to the point where you almost don't have to think about it. Now for me, doing this, having my chin up and my hand drop, I have to take effort to make that happen, as opposed to right in there where I leave very limited openings. So Marat Grigorian, guys, super dangerous fighter. Because we're coming up on him versus Superbon, and that's just a day away, I'm very interested to know or to hear what you guys think about the outcome of Marat versus Superbon. We've gone through a list of what I think Marat is so good at. Do you think it's enough to defeat Superbon, who recently KO'd Petrosian? But keep in mind that Marat has already KO'd Superbon. So this is a rematch, and this is a chance for Superbon to see if he is truly the #1 fighter in the world, or if the last time against Marat was just luck. Because the fight ended super quick before Superbon sort of got his pace in, before he got settled. So let me know in the comments what you think, who will get the win, and if you have another fighter that you want me to cover in this series, drop it in the comments below as well. I'll add it to my list. And if you have not already, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel, get subscribed. Train hard, guys. I'll see you back here soon for another video.